All right, good morning, everyone. I think we're going to go ahead and get started. It is 9 a.m. Pacific time, so we want to get started right on time here. And Christy has let me know that she's ready and raring to go here. So, um, hi, Christy. Good morning. Great to see you. So, I am John Kimball from Safe Food Alliance, and we're very happy to host this SQF webinar this morning on the topic of food safety culture. And this is a topic I know Christy's really excited about and been looking forward to talking about, myself as well. Definitely something that's very close to the heart. And I think even, 10, 15, 20 years ago, it was something that we didn't have a term that we could use to refer to food safety culture. But it was something that we, kind of inherently understood that we need to have this culture of food safety and that food safety is everyone's job, right? And so anyhow, so I have been here for just almost 9 years at Safe Food Alliance. And my job, I deal with food safety training. I do some SQF audits, BRC audits, HACCP audits, things like that. We have FSMA audits we do as well. And our company also has a couple of laboratories here in California. So we do a lot of testing for pathogens and pesticides and all sorts of other things. So if you have any questions around our lab testing, we'd love to hear from you on that, or any sort of training or auditing service you may be looking for as well. So with that, I'll go ahead and introduce Christy. And this will be my, I think, fourth time using this awesome bio that I got from you, Christy. I love it. So Christy Grzywinski has made a career of helping food companies create systems that ensure the safe production of food, including 11 years working with the National Restaurant Association's Serve Safe program. And maybe some of you are familiar with that program. Now, as the technical director for the Food Industry Association's Safe Quality Food Institute, or SQF, Christy is responsible for supporting the delivery of a consistent, globally recognized food safety and quality management program based in sound scientific principles. She particularly shines at developing mind-blowing training programs and making otherwise complex topics approachable. Christy enjoys binge eating jalapeno potato chips, my favorite part, and tiny chocolate, but not necessarily at the same time. I'm definitely a food person myself, and not necessarily always a foodie. Sometimes just a simple piece of bacon makes me happy. So, but anyway, so great to see you this morning.
Yeah, thank you, John, so much for having me here. I completely forgot I gave you that intro. And here's a funny story. So I've been nooming, right? So I've been trying to lose that COVID weight, and I used the same bio for my Noom little bio. So I fully admit to the jalapeno, I call them jalapeno chips, and the chocolate. You know what? Everybody's got to enjoy life. So thank you so much for having me here again today. I got my computer organized so that you can see me straight on. And just a reminder, I have the chat popped up on the side here. So if you would like to chat in a question as we go along, please feel free. We will answer some questions at the end, but you know what? If you've got a question or something didn't come across clearly, because sometimes that does happen to me and I've had a lot of coffee, just type a question in the chat and I have it right here on the side so that I can see it. Okay, let's go ahead and get started. Next slide, John.
Now, Christy, I will say I forgot to mention we are recording this. So just so everyone knows, right? So anyhow, this will be available later as well if you want to share with others, but just to make you aware since you're on the webinar.
So, Yes, we had some questions already, and what John does is, and his wonderful team is pop this up on the SFA website. So you'll see me and the other webinars that John and I have done together up on the website very predominantly. So actually I've gone back to them myself. So yeah, they'll be up there very soon. So again, like John said, I am Christy Grzwinski. I'm a technical director here at SQFI. I've been at SQFI for 10 years. At the end of September on my birthday is the day I started at SQFI 10 years ago. So thank you again to John and the Safe Food Alliance for inviting me to speak to you today. And thank you all so much for being here. We've got a great topic for you today. So here's what we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about food safety culture, what it is, what it looks like, how do you measure it? And John will talk a little bit about how your auditor is going to look at it. I think that's probably what you're wondering about during your SQF audit. I'll start off by talking about the requirements for food safety culture in the SQF code, take a look at it and how we address it in edition 9. And then we'll talk a bit about the role of the food safety culture in an SQF system. Lastly, I'll talk a bit about how to build food safety culture, just give you a little introductory thoughts about that. Where do you start? How do you figure out where you're going? How do you know when you get there? And is there a stop sign or an end picture? We'll talk a little bit about that. And then I'll hand it over to John, and he's going to talk about ways to measure and assess food safety culture, and a bit about what your auditor will be looking for, as we said, as he or she assesses your site. Then we'll wrap up with some resources and some questions. But like I said, pop up the questions in the chat box right there. All right, next slide. Go ahead and dive right in. Next slide. Well, okay, let's kick it off by looking at what the code says. Here it is, cut and pasted right from the SQF code, edition 9. And there are VI 6 sub requirements. Oh boy, I had to get out both hands for that one. The established, let's go through them real quick. I have on my little notes here in front of me, I highlighted a couple of things. So let's just go through them real quick. I don't doubt that you've already looked at them, but I'm sure you want to see what SQF's perspective is on it. The establishment. The senior site management shall lead and support a food safety culture within the site that assures, at a minimum, the establishment, documentation, and communication. So that's your document and implement. You see that all over the code, document and implement. And communicate. That was very clearly put in there. It's not just something that you put on a piece of paper and you put in a file, or you create a document and you store it away. This is a living, breathing document, and you'll hear a little bit more about that in a second. So document and implement your food safety objectives and performance measures. So how are you going to measure it, right? That's probably one of the big things that you're wondering about too, is how do you measure this? We'll let John talk about that. Adequate resources are available. Who here has adequate resources, whether it's people, time, money, the supplies you need? That's the challenge, isn't it, right? Having those adequate resources. I mean, I'm not going to lie. I'm sure John and I could both tell you, in our jobs, having adequate resources is a challenge. So, but what are you going to do about it? How are you going to address that? How are you going to make sure that food safety is your priority? Next one, number 3, food safety practices are adopted and maintained. Again, it's a living, breathing document. How are you going to put this into place? How are you going to implement your document? Number 4, employees are informed and held accountable. for their food safety responsibilities. So again, it's not just a document. How are you going to communicate it? How are you going to train folks? How are you going to make sure that they are responsible for those things? And that's what you do. Your line employee knows how to check the CCPs, but in the big picture, how are all your employees going to be responsible for the culture of food safety, for making sure that they allow food safety to happen? And we'll talk a little bit about that in a second. What was I on? V, employees are positively encouraged and required to notify management about actual or potential food safety issues. It's not just that they know about it, but what do they do about it? And that ties into the last one. Employees are empowered to act. So it's not only that they know it, but that they do something about it, and that they have an environment where there's not going to be repercussions, there's not going to be penalties, there's not going to be some side eye when somebody says something, right? So this is what we're creating, is this culture. All right, that in a nutshell is what the code requires. And now let's talk even more about this. So go ahead to the next slide.
All righty.
This next slide, I thought I would put up there for those folks who are already SQF certified. And I thought I would put this up there to calm you down. Everybody's like, oh my God, food safety culture. And we keep hearing a lot about this. It's the buzzword in the industry right now, isn't it? Food safety culture. Frank Yanis and FDA is talking about food safety culture. This has always been a part of the SQF code. So you already have a lot of this in place. I think what we're doing now is just putting that fresh eyes on that, putting everything into one place, under one heading, under 2112, so that it's a program. It's like your sanitation program, your personal hygiene program. You have your food safety culture program where you're thinking about it, and you have metrics around it, and there's action items around it, and something that you review as part of your internal audit. So I wanted to put this up here so that you're like, oh, okay, this isn't so bad. We've already been doing this. The last one, though, while it was always implied, we wanted to be sure that it was emphasized that, like I said in the last slide, that the employees not only know what to do, but they are provided that safe space to do it, that they are empowered to do it, that they, not only have the tools, but again, there's not going to be repercussions, that they feel that they can come to their supervisor, to their manager, and say, there is an issue. I think we need to do something, or this is what I'm going to do. So that one was added to make sure that the employee, that the site knows that this is what they're responsible for. It's not just lip service. It's not just a piece of paper. There's actual work that the site management has to do to create that culture. Next slide. I'm talking way too much.
Oh, no, it's fine.
I'm very passionate about this, John, and I love
know
this topic.
You are, and I love it. I keep kind of holding back because I want to jump in and add things to what you're saying.
Yeah, and if you want to, go ahead. But I'll try to be done as quickly as possible.
Oh,
and then
no, it's fine.
You can add, jot down notes. All right. So food safety culture underpins every food safety program at your site. And this was just an attempt at emphasizing that. And I literally just threw up 4 food safety programs onto the screen, but think of any other one at your site. Food safety culture has a role in the success of every food safety program. Think of your own site and other sites that you may have worked on where culture may have been lacking. Let's think about personal hygiene. If you don't have the right tools let's just talk about hand washing, to do the hand washing, you can't wash your hands. If hand washing isn't the norm, right, within your site, then, which is unlikely, but we're just using it as an example, if it's not the norm, to wash your hands, then people aren't going to wash their hands. People look at you kind of funny, like, what's this one doing washing their hands? Same thing with sanitation. If you don't have the right tools, the resources, right? You're not given enough time. It's not given enough time. It's not put a big focus put on it. Same thing, approved suppliers. Thinking about the impact that approved suppliers can have on, say, your finished product. Many of you may be actually creating that finished product if your almonds are the such. But again, making sure you have approved suppliers, approved service providers, right? So the people that harvest your nuts and all that. And making sure that, having that culture training, what's the first thing that gets cut? And that's training. We don't have enough time. We can't take them off the line. Can't you cut that down? I mean, I get it as being, the training person is that's one of the first things to get cut, because you're like, they'll learn it, but giving enough time and devotion and importance to training people properly, that's all part of your food safety culture. Go ahead and say what you wanted to say, John, and we'll switch to the next slide.
Oh, there's so much to say here, right? But I think the approved suppliers program example is a great one because it's not just a matter of this is my list of 5 things I need from all of my high-risk suppliers. Check the box, check the box, check the box. I have their audit, I have their what, right? You're trying to protect your company and your consumers. And so if something goes wrong with an ingredient and you have a recall on your products as a result of your supplier's mistake, it doesn't matter who is at fault legally, it hurts your company. So it is not just about checking the box with your programs, right? It is about doing your due diligence to make sure things are right. So it's looking at that audit report or those nonconformities from your supplier, or testing those supplies and not just accepting a COA on every batch, right? It's the due diligence piece. And that's true for any of these programs. It's not about checking a box. It's about always thinking about, how to be proactive, right? And just living and breathing it, right? So it's something that's been part of SQF since its inception, right? And as I said, even 20 years ago, before we used this phrase, food safety culture, we didn't have that phrase to use, but we knew that food safety was everyone's job and that we always need to be watching, right, Christy? And that was kind of the thing that, even though we didn't have the phrase yet, it was a concept that we knew, and we knew well.
Right thing, yeah, do the right thing. But how do you make sure that you have an environment where people will do the right thing, right? It's more, you're like you said, it's more than just ticking that box that yes, there's soap in the soap dispenser, there's towels. How do you create that environment where people will, want to wash their hands because they know it has an impact on the food that they produce? Yep.
And wash their hands properly.
Yes, properly. Yes, exactly. Like I wash my hands. I don't know if I always wash them properly, but again, I always say I'm not handling food. So.
Yeah, and that's a great thing to do as a food safety person in the plant, is just go take 10 minutes to watch people returning from break or coming in at the beginning of shift.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Watch them putting on, or they put on their smock, they wash their hands, and then they tie their shoes, right? Or I've seen this one before. I don't know if you have in your years, Christy, but I was watching an individual. They went to wash their hands, grabbed the soap, and they scrubbed for about 5 seconds, bent in to rinse their hands, looked over and saw me, and then they rubbed their hands for a very long time in the water because it was not 20 seconds.
I was just going to say that. Or are they washing their hands just simply because you're standing there? Yes, exactly. Are they doing this because they know this is the right thing to do?
Yeah.
It's the hard part. That's the hard part. That really is the hard part. How do you get people to do the right thing? All right, next one. I don't think I have that many more slides. Okay. So what we did in edition 9 was formalize this concept of food safety culture. Even though the majority of the requirements were already in the code, the emphasis on food safety culture as a concept, like we're saying, just like John said, has increased, from your SQF system to your FDA program, right? Everyone is talking about having and improving food safety culture, but what does that mean? So let's start off with a definition. Shared values, beliefs, and norms that affect mindset and behavior towards food safety in, across, and throughout an organization. Okay, so what in blue blazes does that mean? And it's just what I said. This is what we do. This is creating that environment to allow these things to happen. That's what food safety culture is all about. And this is a pretty simple definition, but one of the things that you have to do is kind of own this concept. What does this mean here? What does this mean for us? And turn that into, this is what we do. And you think about this in terms of your own life and, like, say, your family. And I always find it interesting, when you go over to someone else's house to eat, and not just looking at their food safety practices. Sometimes you just gotta let go and let things happen when you're eating over at your aunt's house. But how do they do things differently, in disciplining their kids and their dogs and cleaning? I think it's interesting to look at the way that other people do things within their family. And the same thing applies here. This is our site. This is how we do things. We always set the table and sit down to eat. All right, so next slide. Food safety culture, in practical terms, means that everyone in the business understands and shares the same mission and values, right? Blah, blah, blah. That's part of the requirements. They're committed to making positive changes and holding themselves accountable. But there's some common themes through this, and you'll see this over and over again. Food safety culture in a business involves, like I said, shared values. And I'm just going across on these and take a screenshot, or you will see this again on the website. Senior site management sets the tone, just like mom and dad set the tone at home. Senior site management set that tone, right? And we use the phrase, the fish stinks from the head down. It is true, it's a positive or a negative, how that is pushed down to the site. Communication, again, we mentioned this as part of the food safety culture plan. It's not just documented, implemented, it's communicated. And empowerment. This is what I keep talking about, giving people the, not just the responsibility, but creating that environment where they can do their best. So strong culture comes from people understanding the importance of making food safe, committing to doing whatever it takes every time, and starts at the top, but needs everyone's support to be successful. And last but not least, empowered. Okay, next slide.
All right.
Every business has a food safety culture, right? The issue is whether or not it's a good food safety culture or a not so good food safety culture. The goal is to keep moving ahead. Continuous improvement is the name of the game with food safety culture. Do you notice there's no stop sign? There's no end. We live on a globe that's round. It's a circle. That's what I was trying to get at here with this nice little clip art, is that food safety culture is a journey. There's never going to be an end. And that's the expectation of the SQF program, is continuous improvement. And there's a section devoted to that as well, right? And this feeds into your food safety culture and all your other programs. How are you continuously improving your sanitation program, your pest control program? How are you emphasizing continuous improvement? And your food safety culture underpins that, right? If there is the expectation at your site that we're going to get better, we're going to keep working on this, we're going to make things better than it was yesterday. That's your food safety culture journey. So what is down that road? Where does having a positive food safety culture lead your site? Well, study shows that companies with a strong culture see better employee retention. That helps, right? Talk about that whole cycle. You hire somebody new and then they leave and then you got to start over. So if you have a better culture, a more positive culture, you're going to retain people, right? Better reputation in the marketplace, right? Better business performance, you're meeting those KPIs. And those are just some of the benefits to having a positive, a better food safety culture. So you're ready to embark on this journey? Head out with the next slide.
Yeah, and just so that we let everybody know, notice there are a couple of questions that have come in, and we will definitely touch on those momentarily. The thing with this Zoom, Christy, we've got the chat and we have the Q&A.
Yes,
right?
now I see it, sorry.
And I think these questions we can touch on a little bit after you get through the next bit of slides, maybe, before I dive into my section. Does that sound okay?
Yeah, that sounds good.
I just wanted to acknowledge.
The Q&A. Yes, yes.
Perfect.
Okay. Saw nothing in the chat, but I forgot about the Q&A. Okay, Racket, go ahead. Yeah. So how do you know where you are and where you want to go? How do you move forward to this better place? And where do you start? And I forgot to put a header on this slide, but to begin with, really, you need to paint that picture of success. Like literally with any journey, you have to figure out where you're going. Are you going to Paris or are you going to Seattle? Paint that picture of success. How do you know when you get there? That literally is what this is. And that's literally what the mission and vision are, that your site management is going to define. What is this going to look like? What is a positive food safety culture look like? And you're going to talk about this as a team. You're going to say it's a place where we all feel encouraged to do the right thing. To do this, as I said, the management is going to critically assess your site of the business in these areas: your values, the vision and the mission. People, again, it all comes down to the people, empowering people, and consistency and accountability. I think consistency is the big thing where that us as employees, we worry about. I wasn't reprimanded for stopping the line today or discarding that batch today, but am I going to get in trouble tomorrow? Consistency and adaptability. How agile is this business in changing or growing? Is there receptiveness to change and growth? All right, next slide is about getting started. Where do you start? Understand where you want to go and define how you want to get there. This is, like I said, you as the food safety practitioner and the site management, what you're going to define. The starting point is to survey the attitudes and behaviors within your organization. And, that's a baseline study. You do that with anything. You implement a new food safety practice. You're like, here we are today. And this is what we think we're going to achieve with this new food safety practice. And here's how we're going to get there. Same thing with your food safety culture. Where are we today? And that'll help you assess, how much progress you make towards that goal. One of the things that you can use is a guided organizational self-assessment. And if you Google that, search for that, you'll find these self-assessments that you can use. And you may not be able to use something right out of the box, right off the web. You might have to customize it for your organization. It's called a GOSA, a guided organizational self-assessment. And you'll use this as one means to assess your site, where you're at now, and help decide where you're going to go for the future. So plan the food safety culture journey. After assessing your current status of the business against your values, you're going to identify those gaps, just like you did when you implemented your SQF system. You're like, we have these food safety practices, we need these food safety practices, we need to develop these policies and procedures. And that's similar to what you're going to do here with your organizational culture. Here's where we are now, here's where we want to go, here's what we need to do in the meantime. So define that plan for actions or initiatives necessary to close those gaps and positively reinforce attitudes and behavior, and then define your measurements. And that's what John will talk a little bit about. Let's see, next slide is my last slide. And like I said, food safety culture is a journey. You've probably seen this before, the plan, do, check, act cycle. And this is literally what you're going to be doing. You're going to plan. You're going to use that tool to identify those gaps and where you want to go. You're going to define that vision and the mission. You're going to do, you're going to implement, you're going to try some things, you're going to try other things, and you're going to check it. And you're going to see, are we making progress? Are things moving along? Are we getting more people to wash their hands? And then you're going to do this all over again. You're saying, yay, we met that goal. Now what? You know, or, oh, that didn't work so well. What can we try better? And this is that cycle. That's what my hands are doing. So the plan, do, check, act cycle is going to be your friend. And I love this because you can apply this to anything, you know, implementing any food safety program.
Mhm.
All right, do you want me to go through some of these questions?
Yeah, well, Christy, I was just going to say on that PDCA cycle, right? A lot of people that I run into have not heard of that or seen it. You know, the Deming cycle or the, you know, the continuous improvement cycle. So I like to envision the wheel turning, and then I like to envision the ground underneath it at an angle. So you're going uphill, so you're improving by turning that wheel, if that makes sense.
Yes,
Right.
yes.
So our plan, so our plan would be, okay, here's our hygiene policy. You know, here is our CCP procedure for monitoring the CCP, right? That's your plan. And then you implement it. You make sure that, you know, you're doing it. And then the check piece is kind of like, you know, our internal audits, right? Or our quizzing of our people to see if they understand, right? This is our measurement, our checking. And then based on that check that we do, we get those results of here's where our gaps are, and we act on that to improve the plan, which then, you know, starts the cycle over. So it's kind of a continual improvement by improving the plan on an ongoing basis. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I love that.
Exactly.
Yeah. So yeah, let's jump into those questions. I guess that's a good point. So are the BRC food safety requirements similar to SQF food safety?
I would
wait,
not
no, FSC.
That.
That's food safety culture, right?
Probably, yeah.
I'm assuming, yeah.
FSC, food safety culture. Yes.
So do you want to comment on that, or do you want me to?
I would have no idea. I'm not going to lie, John. You would know better than me.
Okay. So, you know, with SQF and BRC, I always tell people they're very similar, and the intent is the same, right? The ultimate goal is the same. It's just the way that they're documented. And so I describe it as breakfast cereal, right? You kind of, they're all cereal, but you choose your favorite flavor. So BRC, I would say, has a tendency to be more specific or granular, that these are the 5 things you have to do. SQF, there are some requirements there around documenting, you know, your objectives, your goals, around communicating with your employees. But it's more as an auditor going in and looking at what's happening in the facility and how are we responding when there's a situation. Are we trying to fix it or not? Is it fixed well? You know, or are there problems that continue to persist that haven't been corrected, right? And so that's kind of what we look at with food safety culture, you know, and what are people saying when we interview them? Do they understand, and is it meaningful to them? Or, you know, are they not aware of things? So there are so many interconnections between the requirements. They're not distinct things you have to do with an SQF. They're all related, right? So food safety culture is just so closely tied to verification and internal audits, as well as training, right? And making sure people are trained and understand is part of that as well, to create that culture, right?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. So, in the end, you know, we're all benchmarked to the same requirements, BRC, IFS, we're benchmarked to the same requirements, and have this food safety culture.
Right.
But how you get there, like John said, the specifics might be a little different, but the overarching goal is the same. And I would say that if you already have a food safety culture for BRC in place, you're probably well on your way to, you know, I mean, again, like SQF doesn't have many specific requirements, but I think, you know, just taking a look at the wording between the two and see if there's any requirements. And food safety culture is food safety culture, you know.
Yeah.
So it's not going to,
you know, and when I worked in the facility too, I would look at other programs besides the ones that we were certified to get a better idea of how I might implement. So in this case, if I were SQF certified, I would still look at the BRC standard to see if there are anything that triggers as a good idea for me to do.
Yes, yeah.
So,
And FDA, right? You know, you're gonna look and see what
yeah.
rank says. Exactly. All right,
So,
next question. Would you have any suggestions for good third-party training resource videos around food safety culture? Well, we'll talk about resources towards the end here on, well, you now have this video. You know, our website, the SQFI website, has some videos, but you have John, and they provide wonderful training for you. I don't know if you have any videos. Do you want to talk to that?
you know, the thing I was going to say is it's, you know, we talk about the topic of food safety culture, but to say, you know, here's a video that we can play for everybody to create that food safety culture. I wish there were something like that, but it's more for me, just the, you know, creating the culture over time on different, in different ways, right? So one example, if you search YouTube for hand washing Gangnam style, have you ever done that, Christy? There are some videos out there where they're going Gangnam style. Here you go, like
Oh
this,
my.
and they're dancing. I guarantee you play that for your employees, and there's going to be a few of them that are boogieing by the hand wash station and joking around about it. I guarantee it.
I'm writing this down.
You know, little things like that that help to create that culture, right? So it's not, you know, find me a food safety culture video. It's more of, you know, how do we create that culture? But videos, it's a great question because videos are a great tool to use.
Yeah. I would say create your own video. I mean, this is your food safety culture. Create your own video or challenge your staff to create a video. Well,
Yeah.
not everybody's got a cell phone and a TikTok account.
Yeah.
A lot of these other questions we're gonna touch on. So hang tight, hold in there, Jeff. And Angie, John's going to talk about that in 2 seconds. We're not quite done yet, so he's going to talk about that. But Bonnie, you're asking, do auditors care strongly if it's a manager or the senior manager was creating most of the components of the food safety culture? Now that's a very interesting question because food safety culture involves everyone at the site. The senior site management's creating the vision, you know, it's like mom, you know, in the house, mom and dad, you know, and this is my, you know, this is the way we're going to do things. And these are my expectations. So that's what senior site management does. But if it's your senior manager or manager, how is that, how then is your senior site management bought into that? Is that what they support? I hope you understand what I'm saying, Bonnie, is that this, you know, this is it's top down in that they're setting the vision, but encompasses everyone. John, maybe you can say it better.
Yeah, no, I think that's all very true. And I will say one of the challenges with being an auditor is, you know, the question, I understand what you're getting at, Bonnie, and hi, Bonnie, by the way, great to see you again. But the question, right, do auditors care strongly, right? We have to try really hard to take out our personal preferences and try to audit just to the standard. As a human being, it's hard to do. And so it's more a question of, does this meet the standard, right? So if we see that food safety manager trying to push a rope and nobody's listening, there's a problem, right? But if we see top management setting goals and objectives and saying, everyone, we're going to try to reduce foreign material complaints by this much in the next year, and here are the tactics we're going to use to do it. And then the quality manager and the production manager and the other folks take those tactics and they implement those tactics specifically within their operational areas. That's kind of what we're looking for, is everybody being involved in an appropriate way, right? So we're not going to have the company owner typically out there verifying the CCP monitoring logs or something like that, right? So it's what is an appropriate level of involvement there, you know, for each area. And, you know, one of my previous jobs, we had objectives, goals, strategies, and measures or something like, or tactics and measures, something like that, where, you know, you set the top level objectives and then each level in the organization adds more detail. So you get to the bottom level and it's specifically every day at 9 o'clock, I'm going to do this. But at the top level, the owner's saying, here's what we're trying to achieve.
Right. That makes sense. Yeah, that makes, hopefully that helps you, Bonnie, and then our Mr. or Ms. Anonymous attendee. You know, yeah, like John said, if it's, we always worry, when you see everything's being done by the practitioner, even in the overall food safety system, what's going on there? Is there no support from the bottom or support from the top? It's okay that individual's writing that, but is everybody involved? So ultimately, that's what the auditor would be looking for. Okay.
Yeah, so I think these other questions, as you said, maybe are appropriate to wait till toward the end and dive in again. And I suspect, as with previous webinars, there's going to be plenty of discussion at the end, and we're going to run right up to 10 o'clock with this. So that's great, because we want people to get as much out of this as we can. And my slides won't take a super long time. Hopefully they'll be very helpful to give you a direction to go, right? In this 1 hour, we can't tell you everything you have to do. But we can give you hopefully a better idea of what we're looking for and where to go for further help. So, how do we measure or assess food safety culture? It's kind of an intangible, right? So is that even possible? Well, there are some ways we can assess that within the facility. So again, this is that quote or that definition that Christy used that comes from the GFSI paper, I believe, right? Position paper, the shared values, beliefs, and norms that affect mindset and behavior, right, toward food safety in and across an organization. Again, top down, right? And just to give you a specific example that I thought of earlier, Christy, you were talking about I don't remember where you had the 4 things on the slide, and kind of empowering employees to act. And I heard this example that has stuck with me, that and I don't remember if I heard it from you folks or somewhere else, but the idea of the CEO, right, or the company president or somebody walking out into the plant and they intentionally bypass the hand wash, or they don't put a hairnet on or something like that, right? So our culture often tends to be, oh, I don't want to say anything, that's the boss, or it's not my job, or I don't want to infringe on somebody else's rights, kind of a thing. But we want everybody to take enough ownership of, hey, I don't want somebody to get sick, and so I'm going to say something in a nice way, right? We're not trying to promote, conflict in the workplace, but we want to have the culture of reminding each other, right? So this individual walks out into the facility without the hairnet or didn't wash their hands, and the first person that walks up to them, excuse me, boss, I know I hate to bother you because I know that you have a lot going on, but you skipped the hand washing, and I know you just forgot, and I'm just reminding you. And then the person says, hey, here's a Starbucks card. Thank you very much. That was, I was trying to see who would stop me. So just imagine the culture that creates, right? Doing things like that, rewarding people. And I know companies right now that reward people with a, a $10 Starbucks card or something. You've been caught doing the right thing. I love that concept. So one thing to point out, FDA, right, in their new era for food safety, right, the new era of smarter food safety, one of the pieces of that is food safety culture. And I think they're trying to figure out, okay, how do we regulate this, right? And how do we really wrap that up into our regulations? I don't think we're going to see a food safety culture bill going through or anything like that, but it is inherent in the food safety practices in the facility of what everybody's doing every day. And again, keeping in mind Frank Giannis over at FDA now, right, in charge of food safety, is somebody who's written a couple of books that I'll show you later on food safety. And so it's very clear, as he was part of a lot of these discussions around food safety, it's very clear that, where this is coming from, that FDA is now looking for food safety culture. And also out of Europe, the Codex Alimentarius, right? They have their general principles of food hygiene, which includes the Codex HACCP guidelines in there. And in 2020, they updated it, and you will find the term food safety culture in there now as well. So it is something being talked about or discussed at the regulatory level. So, I think cars are a really good example to make things really practical, right? So think of your company as a car, right? There are lagging indicators and leading indicators. So a lagging indicator is something that comes up as a problem that you've got a symptom caused by something else, right? So we're trying to measure how our company is going, or how things are going, how our company is operating. With a car, right, if we have engine noise, we know there's a problem. If there's smoke, if the car is not passing a smog test, we know there's a problem that led to that, right? If we have exposed belting on a tire, we know there's been a problem that's led to that, and it's been there for a while, right? So those are just my kind of examples that I thought of as lagging indicators. And so those are things that we want to catch at our facility when they occur, but preferably we want leading indicators, right? Things that are ahead of the problem, right? So doing maintenance check results and seeing how things are operating and where things are at before it becomes a problem later. I noticed that the tires are starting to wear a little unevenly, whether it's my alignment or something. I don't want to get to the point where there's belting exposed. Visual check of the oil, the coolant. Sometimes they have indicators, a little warning light on the dashboard. Sometimes, older cars, it may be a little more manual, but the idea is what can I monitor and keep an eye on that would lead to that problem, right? How can I get ahead of problems before they happen? Right. So in a food company, a little picture from our laboratory there, by the way. I always like to throw in a little bit of, here's somebody in our lab or something like that where I can. But so lagging indicators in food companies may be something like, wow, we found a pathogen, right? Whether in our facility or in our product when we tested it before we shipped. We're getting customer complaints. That's definitely a problem that has gotten out of your control, right? You want to catch it and prevent it before it gets into your product, or at least before it gets to the customer. And a lot of the SQF programs are built around exactly that. Defects that we find at inspection at the end of the line, or a chemistry test result at the end of the line. And as you can see, kind of a common theme here, they're all after the fact. They're all at the end of the line. All right, so leading indicators might be, well, let's quiz our employees. Right? What are the results of this knowledge assessment, this quiz? Let's see what they think or what they understand, and maybe concepts that they are struggling with, right? So now we're getting into things that you can do, some tactics you can use in your facility to measure and work toward a food safety culture. Monitoring the process and trending before an issue occurs, right? So maybe the example of, obviously, if you're trying to cook something to 280 degrees and you're at 285, you're watching that temperature go up and down, right? It's the same thing with any process, right? Whether it's a chemistry test, whether it's the packaging line, and are we starting to deviate where our oxygen's getting a little bit high, or maybe the seals are not quite right on the bags. Before we get to the point where it's unacceptable, we want to catch it and steer it back in the right direction. Also, leading indicators are internal or third-party audit results. Right, so we find a minor nonconformity, or we find something that we are giving kind of an opportunity for improvement or a verbal warning on, that we know if it's left unaddressed will get worse, right? Culture surveys, and I'll give you an example, and we'll talk about this a little bit. Surveying your employees in a way that allows you to kind of assess the culture of the organization. No tool is perfect, but there are some great tools out there that you can use, that you can adopt, and you can adapt to your purposes. And then results of challenging the program. What does that mean? Well, we have to challenge our security programs, right? We have to do a mock recall and challenge our traceability. And I always say, look, if you do a mock recall and you find that you're not able to trace your packaging, for instance, right? Well, that's a good thing because you caught it, right? You found it. Just like when your bait station catches a rodent before it gets in the facility, it's doing its job, right? So challenging the program and finding those gaps sometimes is a really great way to make sure that you're not going to have a problem later. So those are leading indicators. So how do I use a survey, right? Well, the idea here is we have a list of questions that our staff answer anonymously. All right, so to get an accurate picture, a good rule of thumb is to have at least half of your workforce complete the survey. If you have a smaller facility with less employees, maybe you want to try to get everybody or almost everybody. And then you need to make sure it's something that is scored using numerical values and ratings, right? How do we tangibly, measurably turn what people are thinking into a number we can use to say, where do we need to improve our culture in our facility? All right, so then you can use a food safety culture matrix to define the outcome. So I'll show you an example of that here real quick in a couple of slides. But it's basically saying, okay, maybe we have 5 questions on this topic, 5 questions in this area, and then the results of all those questions from all the employees give us a number, right? Somewhere from 1 to 10 or 1 to 5, and we can see where we might need to improve our culture, right? So we do this survey or this questionnaire, and the results are a benchmark for, again, it's not a question of, is our culture good or is our culture bad? It's a question of where is our culture and where do we need to improve it before the next time that we do the survey next year, right? Because again, I mean, it's not yes or no, good or bad. It's a continuum, a spectrum, okay? So for example, and these are taken from a reference that I'm going to suggest, which is the Food Safety or the Food Standards Australia New Zealand, FSANZ, has a food safety culture toolkit that you can download. It has a whole set of surveys and things that you can use. Okay, so for example, a staff questionnaire, right? Answer the following question about food safety in your workplace, right? Who is responsible for food safety in the business? Well, we already mentioned this earlier, Christy, right? As a great question to ask people. Who is responsible for food safety, right? Is it the owner? Is it the food safety manager, the QA manager, food safety supervisor, staff that have contact with the products, or is it all staff within the business, right? If everybody or almost everybody can answer that that it's everybody, the answer is E, then we're in good shape. If we get answers all across that spectrum, then obviously we need to communicate with the employees and talk with them, have a dialogue, right? On the right side there, you can see, questions related to clear leadership. Do we have a food safety vision? Have we set clear expectations? Right? And that goes right back to the requirement within SQF, right? So if employees look at that and say, well, I don't think the company has created a clear vision or clear expectations because I really don't know what I'm supposed to be doing other than I go out and check the product, right? But I don't know where we're going long term, right? So maybe they'll say, disagree, right? So then you take those responses and you say, okay, well, we need to talk more about what our vision and what our goals are, right? Do managers walk the walk and talk the talk? Boy, what a great question, right? And sometimes hard to hear the feedback, honest feedback about yourself, but that's important, right? So take a look at that, that toolkit, and then what we'll do is we'll take those data and they'll go kind of on a continuum like this one, right? Knowledge of food safety. Well, those questions related to knowledge of food safety that our employees answered, when we take those numbers and aggregate them, where do we land on this continuum, right? Are we, is there unintended or even deliberate non-compliance, or are we responsible and accountable, or maybe even food safety champions, right? Always a great goal to set. And then, so also the 2 books written by Frank Giannis here I wanted to share. These are both great books to look at. I think food safety culture is great for understanding what food safety culture is and how to kind of practically create that food safety culture. And then the one on the left, food safety equals behavior, is more around enhancing compliance, around the tactics of the daily routine. How do we really get into that, implementing a food safety culture and measuring it? Okay, so great books. They're an easy read. You'll get through them very easily, and they're very practical and helpful. So, and I think maybe I forgot to insert a slide. So again, I'll go back and just mention Food Safety Australia, New Zealand, FSANZ, has a, a food safety toolkit that you can download. I was going to try and put in a screenshot of what it looks like. But anyhow, yeah, definitely go out and look for that, and stay in touch with us as well for future questions. Did you want to touch on resources, and then we can dive into the Q&A?
Yeah, that's fine. Go ahead. Go to the next slide. Really, all I have is this, is the SQFI website really is a great resource. And while John was talking, I pulled it up here, and you can see all the webinars that we've done are linked on there. The one that John and I did about the code is up there. So lots of webinars. Anytime we do one of these, they're up on the screen there. We have those checklists. Helpful to do your internal audit as well, because it's really just the code in an Excel format. We have a fancy little format. We have the change documents. You probably have moved past those, but if you want to compare between 8.1 and 9, you can see that. You'll see lots of things were rearranged for this edition, and our new guidance documents. We do have a guidance document on food safety culture, and it's worth taking a look at. We came up with a new format for these guidance documents, and they're really kind of cool. So we talk about Rio, we're talking about go to Rio. So what are the records? What are the interviews, and what are the observations that would need to be made to demonstrate compliance with the requirement, or that the requirement has been properly implemented. So you're looking at, we say everything must be documented, implemented. So right there, you know, what is the documentation, and what are those observations that you would make to show that that program has been properly implemented. So we do that for food safety culture, sanitation, personal hygiene. We have all these great guidance documents. That's, I think, all I had. The one I did want to mention is the GFSI document on food safety culture is actually really very good. And if you go to mygfsi.com and just search for food safety culture, there's two documents. One's a summary, and the full document is actually very helpful. I have it over here. And it kind of walks you through those things that I talked about: the mission and the value, the people, and the values of the organization, adaptability. So it walks through, and measurement, and walks through what does this look like in terms of your food safety culture. So that document on my GFSI is helpful. And I say that because, I think Frank Yanis was involved in the development of that, as well as I think Lone Jesperson, who is well known in that area. So that's a good document as well. And that's all that I had.
Okay, great. Yeah. We do have a resource hub on our website as well. And you can search the website. We have all sorts of downloads and different, things that you can find on our website as well, including we've got a 2-hour training. It's kind of a self-paced training on our website around food safety culture that you can do. And we also have a training that we can do customized for your company. So one thing that's really kind of taken off with the pandemic is, with all the Zoom meetings, and we've all gotten comfortable with them now, we can do live training with your team, and you can all be in a room at work, or you can be on separate computers, and we can have a discussion instead of just talking at you, right? We can talk with you. So we can do those live as well. And but I do want to get to the questions, because we're just bumping up against 10 o'clock here. And what does the SQF auditor expect to see in your program, such as an SOP for food safety culture? Again, if you look at the requirements, the documentation that's required right in that first clause there is around objectives and goals, right? And having those set to be followed. You also look for indicators of adoption of practices, right? And so just like Jeff has a question as well, how do you measure food safety culture, and will it be audited, right? Or how will it be audited? It goes back to a lot of the same things we've always looked at. Are people following the practices? How do they answer the questions when we talk to them? Are they aware of the requirements, and are they aware of where they can go for help if they don't know what to do, right? And do they, can they give examples of things? And even asking them, so why is it important to make sure that the CCP is under control, right? And just leave it open. I love open-ended questions during audits. I think they can be a little bit disarming sometimes, right? You say, so in your own words, can you tell me this? And it's better than, making them feel like they're being tested, right? So, but it's hard to say, specifically what should your company have, because every company is different, and it's a journey, as Christy said, from where you're at now to where you should be next year and 5 years from now. But specifically setting those objectives and around, people's knowledge and how they answer questions and what they're doing out there, like washing hands or what they're wearing or cleaning up the trash, right? And then this next one, can food safety culture be truly developed in a facility that lets go and rehire staff, right? Both line workers and food safety staff routinely, or annually, right? And we see this a lot. A lot of our customers are seasonal, right? Based on production and harvest season. So, I mean, I don't know, Christy, I feel like I'm taking all the questions here, but I'd love to jump in on this one and just say that a company cannot afford not to make sure that their employees understand and follow, right? But it is a fair question, how, right? And is it even possible? I believe it is. A lot of it is around training and supervision and verification. So if somebody's a new employee or a temporary hire that you bring in from a temp agency or a seasonal employee, what you have to ask yourself, what do I need to do to make sure that they understand and follow the programs just like a full-time employee would? Typically, it is adequate training, recurring training, additional verification or oversight, checking what they're doing, giving them, redirection if they're not quite doing the right thing, right? And as long as, and then also it goes back to, well, I'm not going to take somebody who is temporary and have them in a position where they're dumping something into a big vat of product, where if they just decided to do the wrong thing, they could put whatever they want in there, right? So it's also placing those people in appropriate positions in the facility so that there is not an additional vulnerability there. Right. If that makes sense?
Yeah, that totally does. You can see how it plays into all of the food safety programs within the site. What I was going to say is that's where the upper management, the practitioner, you really have to look real hard at what you most value about your organization and its culture. And that's where you put your emphasis, right? Thinking about this is us and this is how we do things. And focusing, that training, you only have those people for the short period of time. You can't spend months onboarding them. What is most important about your culture, your food safety culture, and focus on those things, right? Boil it down to those core things. What's most important, and do they know who to go to? Mm-hmm. Do they know what their responsibilities are? These are the must-haves,
Yeah, and it's always appropriate to the position. And that's why I mentioned, make sure you have them in a suitable role, because yes. I am never going to ask a forklift driver to recite the 12 steps of HACCP, but they need to know what to do if there's a torn box or a potential allergen risk, or if they see a rodent run across, they need to know what to do, right? That's just very real, practical, routine things that they need to know about. That's how I would assess that person, that individual's understanding of food safety and their commitment to it.
Right. Yeah. Right. Exactly. Appropriate for the role. Exactly. Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah. Another question here we have: any tips on getting your management team to buy into the food safety culture, and how can this be enforced daily without fear of losing your employees? Those are great questions. So on the management side, helping them to understand the why it's important. Because let's face it, right? Quality and food safety programs are a cost, right? There's a cost there, and we're not creating a product, but we are adding value to the product. That's the point to drive home, right? We are adding value to the product. We are investing in the company's future by making sure there's not a problem, and by making sure that we better meet our customers' expectations, and that we don't have a potential regulatory risk here, or potential recall or food safety illness, right? And so along with that, if you better control your processes, it can lead to reduced waste. That's another great place that you can go as a food safety manager in looking at how can we reduce waste in addition to making the product safer, right? If we have less rework, less product thrown away, then that is dollars and cents. And I can guarantee your accounting folks are counting every package and every pound of product, right? And so if you can kind of work those two things together, that goes a long way. How can you enforce food safety culture daily without fear of losing employees? Another great question, right? It is not about punishment, right? There's the carrot and the stick, right? Make sure you have lots of carrots. Encourage people, thank them, give them a Starbucks card because they did something well. Set goals and celebrate them as a team. Bring in lunch when we did well on something, when we met our goals or when we passed our audit. bring in pizza or something, to thank everybody, right? Make sure you weave in a lot of positives,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Lots of carrots. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I mean, pest control traditionally will leave a business card in the station and wait for them to bring it back to us, right? My approach would be, I'm going to tell the pest provider, hey, I'm going to start leaving a business card. I want you to bring it back to me, because what do you get out of that? They are checking every trap every time. Somebody once told me, I put a business card in that trap. It's been 2 months. They still haven't brought it back. I'm waiting to chew them out. That's not the right approach, because, right, you're just waiting to jump on them, and you're not getting what you want. What you really want is for them to check every trap every time.
Right.
Right. So it's catching flies with honey versus vinegar, right?
Exactly. This is a positive thing. This is going to be a good thing for everybody. You want everybody on board. Talking about a session that we're adding to our conference, and it's along these lines, and we're wrestling with this title, and we want to call it, how do you make everyone a QA manager? Not in the bad way, but how do you encourage everybody to do their best so that they're the additional eyes in at the site? How is everybody focused on food safety? It's a win. It's a win for everybody, so anyway.
Yeah, definitely. And the last question is just about the webinar. So we are going to, I believe, make a recording available. Oh, and I should put this slide up too here, Christy. Sorry about that, for SQF Unites. But we are, I think, planning to make the video available. I have not been tracking the questions and answers. I don't think that we're going to send that out like I think we did once maybe previously, but I don't expect that we'll be doing that. But you will have the video. So, and definitely encourage you all to attend SQF. That way it's not just Christy saying, come to our conference, but go to the conference if you're able to. Go through those learning sessions, and I can guarantee you're going to say, okay, educational sessions from 10 to 10:45. Boy, there's 3 or 4 of them, and I want to go to all of them, or at least most of them. And you'll end up having to figure out which one is the highest priority for you, because there's so much great stuff there for folks that are learning about and implementing and living the life of SQF every day, in the plant, trying to implement and keep things going with that food safety culture. So you will be surrounded by like-minded people, and you will be enriched in terms of your knowledge, and you'll be encouraged, and all that. So
yes, I say it's one of my favorite conferences, is not just because I work there. It's like, wow, these sessions are good. It's everything that I want to know about. So anyway, hopefully that you can come. We are keeping an eye on the current situation, and we will take that all into consideration. Right now it's scheduled as a live on-site event, but that's not to say things won't change. So we are.
And somebody was asking too if it will be available virtually this year. Do you know that yet? Or
that's what I'm kind of talking about, is that we are right now it's not scheduled to be, but we are things happen, so we are exploring all options. So yeah, exactly.
Okay, well, Christy, thank you so much. We went over time, so you gave us an extra 7 minutes. So we'll double what we're paying you.
But I get to spend time with you. That's the best part.
Well, and I knew with this subject and how much we're both excited by it, that it would probably go over a little bit, and we'll get lots of questions about it. So stay in touch, everyone. Thank you so much for your time. And if you have questions, don't hesitate to reach out.
Yep. Thank you all so much. Have a good day.